The story begins in the middle of a catastrophe. It's 1915, and the ocean is churning as the Lusitania sinks. Amidst the panic, a mysterious man manages to entrust a young American woman with an oilskin packet. He tells her it contains vital war documents and gives her a specific instruction: watch for a signal in the Times under the word shipmate. If that doesn't work, she's to deliver the packet to the American ambassador. This single moment of desperation sets a clock in motion that won't stop ticking until years later. Fast forward to the aftermath of the Great War. London is a different place now, and Tommy Beresford and Prudence Cowley, who everyone calls Tuppence, are finding that the peace isn't quite as easy to navigate as the war was. They're both demobilized, they're both struggling with unemployment, and they're both looking for a way to make sense of a world that feels fundamentally changed. They aren't quite ready to settle into the quiet, predictable lives their families might expect. Their path into a much larger conspiracy starts almost by accident. Tuppence is out looking for work and finds herself in a situation where she needs to bluff her way through a conversation with a man named Whittington. She uses a name to sound important: Jane Finn. She thinks she's just made it up on the spot, but the moment the name leaves her lips, Whittington reacts with a sudden, violent intensity. It's a slip of the tongue that changes everything. It turns out that Jane Finn is a name that carries immense, dangerous weight. It turns out that the girl from the Lusitania, the one with the oilskin packet, was the real Jane Finn, and she's been missing for years. This realization draws the Beresfords into the orbit of Mr. Carter, an unofficial intelligence operative who works in the shadows of the British government. He presents them with a mission: find the real Jane Finn and, more importantly, find the treaty she's carrying. As they dive into the investigation, the scale of the mystery expands far beyond a simple missing person case. They team up with Julius Hersheimer, a wealthy and somewhat impulsive American who has a personal connection to the mystery through Jane Finn. What they discover is a web of international intrigue that feels almost overwhelming. This isn't just a local crime, it's a coordinated effort involving German agents, Russian interests, and Irish terrorists. They are all working toward the same goal: to destabilize Britain through political manipulation and labor unrest. The investigation becomes a series of high-stakes games of deception. Tommy and Tuppence aren't traditional detectives. They don't sit in offices and look at clues under a magnifying glass. They operate through performance. Tommy finds himself kidnapped and held in a Soho hideout, where he has to rely on sheer psychological bluffing and bulldog tenacity to survive an encounter with dangerous men. Tuppence, meanwhile, uses the social structures of the time to her advantage. She goes undercover as a housemaid to infiltrate the home of the formidable Mrs. Vondermeyer, proving that domesticity can be just as effective a tool for espionage as any weapon. The tension builds through a series of suspicious deaths and disappearances. There's a sense that they are being watched by a shadow figure known only as Mr. Brown. The mystery of who Mr. Brown is becomes the driving force of the plot, a name that is whispered in dark corners but never quite takes a solid shape. The stakes feel personal and existential, especially when Tuppence seems to be killed, her body washing up on the Yorkshire coast, leaving Tommy reeling. But in the world of Agatha Christie, things are rarely as they seem. It's revealed that Tuppence is actually alive, having used disguises and cleverness to evade capture. The investigation shifts into a final, frantic movement. Tommy realizes that the Jane Finn they thought they saw in Manchester was actually a plant, a decoy designed to lead them into a trap. The climax takes place in a house in Soho, where the various threads of the conspiracy finally collide. The grand, shadowy Mr. Brown is finally unmasked, and the reveal is a shock to the system. The mastermind isn't a foreign agent or a career criminal, but Sir James Peel Egerton. He is a highly respected, magnetic and prestigious lawyer, a pillar of the British establishment. He had been orchestrating the entire chaos to use the stolen treaty to trigger a political coup, intending to frame himself as a victim of the very unrest he created. In a final, desperate act to avoid capture and the shame of exposure, Sir James commits suicide by cyanide. The story concludes not with a heavy sense of dread, but with a celebratory supper at the Savoy. The true extent of the conspiracy is laid bare through Sir James's private diary, which confirms that the threat was as vast as they suspected. For Tommy and Tuppence, the resolution is more than just solving a case, it's the beginning of a new way of life. They look at their future not as a traditional marriage, but as a grand, shared adventure. When we look back at this story, a few things stand out that make it more than just a standard thriller. One of the most compelling elements is what we might call the mask of respectability. Christie is playing with the idea that the most dangerous threats don't come from the fringes of society, but from its very centre. Sir James Peel Egerton is the perfect example of this. He uses his social standing and his impeccable reputation as a shield, making him much harder to detect than a common thief. It's a commentary on the stability of the social order, the idea that the institutions we trust to protect us might actually be the vehicles for our destruction. There is also a fascinating look at the post-war disillusionment of the lost generation. Tommy and Tuppence are products of a world that has been turned upside down by the Great War. They are veterans, but they are veterans who find themselves without a clear purpose in the piece. Their decision to form the Young Adventurers Ltd. is a way of reclaiming agency. They are taking the skills they learned in the chaos of war, the ability to bluff, to hide, to move through shadows, and applying them to a world that no longer has clear lines of battle. They are essentially making their own war, one that has rules, but one where they are the ones in control. We also see a very modern approach to gender and partnership. In many novels of this era, the woman's role is to be the domestic anchor, the one who waits at home while the man goes out and performs heroics, but Tuppence refuses that role. She is just as much an operative as Tommy. She uses her ability to move through different social classes, disguising herself as a maid or a lady, to gather intelligence that Tommy simply cannot access. Their relationship isn't built on the traditional idea of a man protecting a woman, but on a partnership of equals. They are a team, and their bond is forged in the heat of shared danger rather than just social expectation. The use of deception is the heartbeat of the entire novel. It's not just a plot device, it's a philosophy of survival. Every character is performing. Tuppence is performing a role, the villains are performing respectability, and even the Jane Finn identity is a performance of amnesia. Christie suggests that in a world this complex, truth is something you have to peel back layer by layer, and often you have to lie to find it. Ultimately, The Secret Adversary is about the triumph of intuition and collaboration over the cold, calculated megalomania of a single individual. Sir James Peel Egerton tried to control the world through a grand, solitary design, but he was defeated by two people who were willing to improvise, to adapt, and to work together. It's a story that moves from the wreckage of a sinking ship to the bright lights of the Savoy, suggesting that even in a world of shadows and secret adversaries, there is a way to find your footing and start an adventure of your own.